Well, I'm joined now by Jill Rutter, a former civil servant who's now at the Institute for Government, also the former Conservative MP and columnist Matthew Parris, and Ian Martin, also a columnist at The Times and editor of the website Reaction. Matthew Parris, let's just talk about the scale of this cabinet cull first. Can you remember anything more vicious?
I can't remember anything more vicious, and I can't remember anything more random, shapeless or pointless.
Give me an example.
Carnage can be necessary in politics, but it has to be carnage with a purpose. This just seems to be destructive, as though he's sat in a room on his own with a piece of paper, crossing names out of people that he doesn't care for. I don't see this as the composition of a government. I see it more as the decomposition of the last government.
Ian Martin, would you agree, or do you see a point to it?
I disagree, actually, with Matthew. I think the point is that he's not building a government for the long term. He's not trying to construct a 2 or 3 or 4 year administration. This is about the mess that he's in, and it's rooted in an understanding that he probably only really has 3 or 4 months. He might be forced into an early general election. I think that's pretty much inevitable, earlier than people think.
And even though he's ruled it out?
He's ruled it out, but Boris rules a lot of things out and then does them. But I think knowing that, you look at where he's placed Dominic Cummings,
his senior
advisor, Michael Gove back in as the sort of linchpin in the cabinet office role, and the way in which he's been absolutely brutal, shedding people from cabinet. It looks to me like the action of a politician who wants to send that classic message, change. That this isn't just a reshuffle, this is a new government.
So Jill Rutter, how will the civil service, not always that good with change, how will they deal with Boris?
Well, most of them won't have to deal with Boris. They'll have to deal with whoever's been sent to them as a new minister. As if we're seeing, most government departments will have a new Secretary of State tonight. There's very little continuity there, so they'll be preparing for that. I think one of the things they will be worried about, they'll be interested to see what Dominic Cummings does at number 10, because obviously he's been quite hard on the senior civil service before.
Yes, he's had some awful things to say about them, hasn't he? He said that, there'd be a leak on the news and you'd see on the screen latest Gove disaster when he was working for Michael Gove. Then you look through the glass screen and see the official responsible for it in the lift, pottering home at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, well, Dominic Cummings got a bit of a reputation, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, how much contact he actually has with the civil service. I think the other thing that civil servants will be a bit worried about, there's that much change, but actually there's a very tight deadline for the 31st of October. You could have made that an argument for stability rather than change. And some of that language from the Prime Minister in his speech about, predictors of disaster, gloom mongers, people will be sitting there and saying, well, if we go and tell the new minister that actually no deal's not going to be a piece of cake or walk in the park, what reaction am I going to get? And I think that's going to be one of the things on all the civil servants' minds this evening.
Matthew Parris, do you think this does point to an earlier general election?
Yes. This can't survive. He's just got a whole lot of new enemies, and some that he didn't need to make. He's going to lose a no-confidence motion before the 31st of October.
Yeah, but he might win an election.
That would be... If he's going to lose a no-confidence motion, then you don't wait to lose it. You call the election beforehand. You
he might do that, I guess.
That's what I would do if I were him.
But there is a problem that he's ruled that out, hasn't he? Specifically to his MPs in there.
I don't think that Boris has ruled something out has ever been a problem in his life in any sphere.
Ian Martin, how easy is it for Boris Johnson to win an election, do you think?
It's extremely difficult. I mean, if you look at the dispensation in the polls, you're dealing with 4-party politics. But he doesn't really have any easy options. Yeah. It's not as though there's an option that he can choose that guarantees 3 years of stability and a peaceful Brexit and harmony in the country. If he is going to be forced into an election, or he's going to be destroyed by the people in this place over there, there is an argument for him saying, well, at least own the situation, lean into it, and say, look, the European Union isn't cooperating, Parliament isn't cooperating, let's settle this once and for all. I suspect that'll be his pitch.
He's brutally putting together a government very, very quickly. He obviously wants to move quickly, he's in a hurry. Can he move quicker on Brexit than people have predicted? Is it any more deliverable under Boris Johnson?
I'm not sure the deliverability changes, but I think there is one thing that changed, and I thought this was very interesting in his speech, was when he talked about lack of decisions over the last 3 years. And what he is doing, and I don't totally agree with Matthew that there's no message from the cabinet reshuffle. This is, in a sense, he's creating a unity cabinet, so he is taking out the people who might have dissented from his approach. So he clearly doesn't want a cabinet where they have long, languid discussions about what do we do. This is a cabinet which everybody in it owes their position to him, so he's in a position of maximum authority. And I think he won't suffer from the sort of divisions within his cabinet that so beset Theresa May, certainly since the 2017 election. So I think he can move quicker there. The difficult side is obviously that doesn't necessarily cut much ice in Europe, and that's the counterparty to any sort of negotiated deal.
Comparisons will be made with Harold Macmillan's Knight of the Long Knives.
Knight of the Blonde Knives.
Yes, and not very happy comparisons, because Macmillan didn't last very long after that.
But you're a Brexitarian, Martin. Do you feel that Brexit is now within reach, as Boris Johnson promises it is?
Within reach, I'm not sure I'd be that optimistic about it. How I feel about it is that this crisis has become interminable, and what's positive about what's happening today, I think lots of people have reservations about Boris Johnson, is that it is going to be brought to a head, at least. One way or the other, there is going to be something closer to clarity. Britain's either going to be out in the autumn or by Christmas, or it's not going to be, and it's going to collapse into some form of coalition. But this idea of this endless, interminable crisis that cannot be broken, he's essentially trying to break that. And it's a big gamble, what I think he's about to do, but it might work.
I just want to ask Matthew Paris Remainer very, very briefly, are you more optimistic tonight that you might be able to reverse Brexit,
Yes.
you and your ilk?
Yeah, he looks flawed and weak to me.
Well, rubbish, they said in the crowd. Thank you for putting up with the noise. I could barely hear you, Ian, but I hope I deciphered you correctly. Thanks very much.